It's true, BYD did recently use a car park at a theme park to store 1,600 brand new cars that they've just shipped into the country with all the stickers on, with no permission. But should they even need permission? That's an interesting question, isn't it? As we'll get into in a minute. You might have seen the headlines: BYD caught storing thousands of new cars at a theme park in New South Wales, just south of Sydney in Australia. At first glance, it sounds bizarre, it's a bit weird. Why would the world's largest EV maker fill up a car park with brand new vehicles, and how did the local council even find out? See, here's what actually happened. Around 1,600 new BYD cars, many of them were Seals, Sea Lions and the new Shark Utes, started showing up over winter. It sounds a bit ominous, I admit. They started showing up over winter at Jamberoo Action Park, just south of Sydney. Locals noticed the cars were parked there while the theme park was closed, or not theme park, the water park was closed for the season. You can actually go on Google Maps and have a look, but here are the pictures. I'll put them on screen for you. They obviously told the council, and satellite images from early August confirmed it. Row after row of unregistered BYDs neatly lined up in a car park, still in all the shipping wrap. So, when Kiama Council investigated, they said that the park owners had not applied for permission to use the site as a commercial vehicle storage yard. Under New South Wales planning laws, you can't just repurpose land for different kind of use. So even if it's technically a car park and you've put some cars in said car park, that's apparently not okay. So the council issued a compliance notice, and the owners quickly lodged a development application to formalise it. Now, this is planning laws and councils in Australia, a little bit of a contentious issue, probably also just like they are in the UK. The DA was submitted in early September. The council ended up rejecting it, so officially it's an unauthorised use of land. Now, BYD responded by saying that this was temporary storage arranged through a logistics partner, and that they began working with council as soon as they were told a DA was required. So that's the public story, that's the formal story. So let's step back for a second, because this is where, in Australia anyway, it gets very interesting. Is it really something that should involve the council in the first place? I definitely can see reasons for both, yes and no. So I'm not actually saying it should or shouldn't. You can say what you like in the comments. If a car park is already a car park and it's full of cars, is it really changing the use of the land just because the cars belong to a company and it's just for a few months? That's what this kind of comes down to, the difference between using a car park for visitors or using it to store vehicles commercially. So legally, they're different, but to most people, it looks like common sense has kind of gone missing here. That's not actually all there is to it. Interestingly, this kind of overreach in Australia is not new at all. Take the city of Casey down in Victoria. That council recently caused a bit of a storm for themselves for suggesting that people needed to buy a permit to change their car oil or keep unregistered vehicles on their property, even if it's a farm with no registration plates, just you simply own the car and you need to register it and pay, formally say that you own it and then pay, not register it with reg plates. It kind of blew up online. People were really, okay, so suddenly this has gotten dodgy. This, that's so far out of the ordinary to do such a thing, you have to pay money to change your own oil on your driveway. People thought it meant that you'd need to pay hundreds of dollars just to fix your own car in the driveway. And it's ended up at the minute where you don't have to, but that was properly going through. Casey Council later said you don't need a permit to service your car anymore, but the council had proposed permits. They were just putting them through. Storing multiple unregistered cars or doing anything that they considered unsightly. And they've since backtracked after many thousands of people signed petitions and contacted the council. This is a reminder, though, that sometimes councils step into areas that they probably shouldn't, and that brings us back to BYD. There's a saying, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than to seek permission. This probably fits BYD quite well. I mean, they make brilliant cars, and I'm sure a lot of what they do is permitted and completely by the books. But yeah, they move fast, they're pragmatic, they don't always wait for permission, they know the consequences sometimes of what they're going to do, they know how much resources they've got and how much money they've got to pay a fine if they need to, and so if something needs doing, they will sometimes just do it, whether it's building a factory in Brazil, maybe a little bit before the permission comes in, expanding some showrooms in Saudi Arabia, for example, or shipping cars out of China at a crazy pace to a country that isn't expecting them, and then the country who is the recipient of said cars says you can't bring them in, and the boat sits outside the country for a month. They're not a bureaucratic automaker, they're not a legacy automaker, they do things in a very tech way. They're go-getters, really. Hello folks, Ben Alexander here. Thank you so much for joining me. Also, thank you to these people on the screen right now. I really appreciate it. These are the channel members. You are very welcome to join for a couple of dollars a month, or just subscribe because it's free. If you enjoy my videos, if you enjoy my work, you can do that. So was this about breaking rules, or is it just about moving faster than the system allows? Because if we're honest, even if BYD knew they needed council approval, it probably made more sense to park the cars first, deal with the paperwork later, wait for weeks at a time for things to be rubber stamped and stuff, and keep deliveries flowing. And that's not unusual for large companies to have that sort of mindset. These companies have an obligation to get things done to multiple people, actually, and that's kind of what they're doing, and they're very, very good at it. Also, let's also just shine a light briefly on Qantas. There was a couple of things that they've done, and they've been caught for doing far worse things over the past few years, from illegally outsourcing staff and maybe making 500 million a year or whatever it was. I think there was a story, it was 500 million profits they would have made from doing something, but they got an $80 million fine. They know what they're doing. The ghost flights, that was a $120 million fine for selling tickets to flights that didn't really exist. But when you look at what they gained, it's easy to see why big companies sometimes take the chance, because the fine is often a fraction of the savings, obviously. That's not news to you, I'm sure, but that's how corporate logic works. Do the maths, take the risk, and apologise later if needed, pay any small fines, try to come out ahead. And in BYD's case, it probably was never about being sneaky, it's about the scale of their operation. BYD has gone from barely known 5 years ago in Australia to, 2 years ago, even 3 years ago, barely anyone really knew about them, and just some people were starting to buy the Atto 3, for example, and they're delivering 20,000 cars a year. Their logistics are bursting at the seams, and they've just switched distributors, obviously, from EV Direct to handling everything in-house. So this was probably just a case of, we need the space to park some cars, and there's a car park over there. We're going to use that car park. We'll just ask the owner. And the owner is probably just dead chuffed at the, I don't know, $500,000 for a few months or whatever they would have said some sort of deal. And of course, it's probably worth the risk for all parties, really. So, of course, the optics look a bit bad, don't they, to some people, or the mainstream media. A Chinese automaker caught dumping cars in a theme park with no permission while they're closed to see if they can get away with it. It makes a really easy headline, obviously, but if you strip away the emotion, the story really is about how different systems collide. Should the council care? Why are they even getting involved? Is there an obligation to the local residents to keep everybody safe? And are there actually things to consider? Because I think there are some genuine things to consider here for the council. And it is a very interesting point. You're very welcome to say your own thoughts in the comments. You've got a company used to rapid execution and a local government used to endless paperwork. One values speed, the other values procedure, and amongst some other things, obviously. Who is right? Well, it depends on how you look at it. Councils are meant to protect land use and local interests. I'm not going to get into the business rates and small businesses being forced out of businesses in Victoria, because that does sound a bit sucky for a lot of the businesses that have been there for 50 years. And there's a lot of things to talk about, but I will try to skim past them all. But at the same time, councils do often a lot of valuable work. So when a car park full of cars becomes a national scandal, it's fair to ask whether the system's working for the people and it's working correctly, or just tripping over itself. BYD's move might look a bit messy, but it also says something about how the EV industry is scaling in Australia. When you go from a niche brand to one of the country's top sellers in maybe 2 or 3 years, the logistics are bound to be a very big hurdle for them. And if the councils keep applying the same old rules to new industries, they might end up slowing down the very transition that they support. So, or maybe this particular council doesn't support it. I don't know. Was this a smart, practical move from BYD? Should they not have done that, or did they cross a line? Do you think the councils are doing their job, or making simple things harder, or as English people would say, making a mountain out of a molehill? Is it even safe to store cars that close together in such a quantity near the edge of the car park, near the trees, near the local community, whatever is there? If one reckless EV hater, obviously, and they do exist in society, set a fire on one of the cars, it potentially could go through 100 cars before the edges of the little blocks of cars end. Maybe it would spread even further. I don't know. These things have happened before. It is the council's job really to apply some rules here, and for them to use some logic. So even though it seems like they're maybe not being logical, maybe there are some good things to be said for these sort of rules. So what do you think? What do you think? Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.